mean, of course, that depends how you define discovered.
Discovered
I wasn't a continent with Indians, but no, I was already working. In fact, before I was doing the small drawings that I became famous for during that period, when I first came to New York, I was doing art performances and dance performances, and I had a small group when our first trip to Europe was in Arnhem and Paris and these sort of avant-garde performance art festivals. So I started as a kind of movement person. I was very interested in photography, painting, and I sort of worked my way through different phases of minimalism.
Because you start not in the...
Before. I started my real artwork in the university in the early and mid 70s, and I had a style that I think you could say was reminiscent of Jasper Johns for a while of painting, and then I realized, okay, I can't repeat. You know what Brancusi said about Rodin. You can't grow a tree under a big tree, so you have to take the influence and move.
It's discovered relating to the concept as a project, in which you were one of the artists, referential artists, no?
Yes.
Because the project of concept was to answer to the question of neo-expressionism in New York. And so their idea of conceptual, I think, was very fit, was very close to your concept.
Yes, it was. And that, again, I think that had to do with two things. First was my early interest in Jasper Johns, who of course was coming out of Marcel Duchamp and John Cage. So you have a concept that's fluid, and it's painting, but it's really an idea that's more important than the execution. And secondly, were my philosophical studies with Arthur Danto, where I began studying Wittgenstein and his picture theory. And so I took those two ideas and started to simplify my painting approach, and ended up deciding I would make some abstract, almost all white paintings, and then I stopped.
Ton parcours, parce que je me rappelle que tu as écrit sur la revue des comics et d'images, mais ils sont beaucoup des années passées, et en fait une chose où tu parlais déjà de la compression des images. Alors, cette idée, il est resté, comme un point de force dans ton parcours théorique. Et j'ai vu qu'ici, il s'est développé encore mieux avec cette idée que la compression, comme dire le degré zéro de l'univers qui s'est compris après l'explosion. Tu as arrivé à le Big Bang.
Le Big Bang, c'est compression par le trou noir. Et bien le trou noir, c'est pas rien, c'est la matière super compressée. Éventuellement, il explose. Ça c'est le rythme de l'univers, le cosmique. Mais c'est aussi le principe de l'orgasme humain, je pense. Parce que tu fais amour, c'est compresse, et après, boum, explosif. Donc le cosmos et le sexe des hommes et des femmes, pour moi, c'est la même chose. Pas la même chose, presque la même chose.
Oui. Et alors, cette idée toujours liée à l'organisme, liée à la biologie, liée à la vie, il est intéressant pour, éclairer ton idée de la révolution, parce que tu es un révolutionnaire militaire. Est-ce qu'il veut dire ça? Dans ton livre, tu parles de ça.
Un révolutionnaire dilettante.
Non, je n'ai pas dit maintenant.
Oui. Quelle révolution?
Il est vraiment intéressant ce que tu dis, parce que, comme dit, la possible révolution, bien sûr, en parenthèse, c'est toujours.
Marxiste, c'est pas de nous,
oui, mais ton idée qui seulement la résistance peut être à un niveau individuel aujourd'hui, non? Dans ton livre, tu parles de ça.
Absolument, c'est fondamental de mon point de vue pour empowerment de l'individu. pas ça, l'image, j'ai fait souvent, c'est difficile de comprendre tout de suite. Pourquoi? J'ai pas besoin de mystifier l'audience. J'ai besoin de faire une challenge, une invitation pour l'audience pour utiliser l'imagination, utiliser la projection, le désir pour interpréter l'image. C'est pour ça que j'ai utilisé la compression, la superimposition, des choses comme ça. Je mélange l'abstraction avec la représentation parce que c'est proposal pour décoder. C'est pas évident tout de suite. C'est pas évident tout de suite.
C'est intéressant.
Et je commence comme ça parce que je suis contre la publicité, contre la manipulation idéologique. Et je commence de mon vie dans la période Ronald Reagan, Morning in America, tout le.
Alors, tout ça, dans l'observateur qui fait un effort de concentration.
Il a besoin de faire ou il parle. C'est comme la musique punk. C'est très dur. Les gens ils aiment, ils restent, et les autres, oh, quelle horreur, ils partent tout de suite. Ça, c'est mon approche. Parce que je suis génération punk.
Do you ever like reference the Renaissance, something like that, painters like Botticelli? Can you speak about this?
Yes. So when I stopped making the minimal paintings, and I said now I have to start all over from new ex nihilo. So I began making little drawings of just a few lines, just 3 or 4 lines, and then I would build on that, and I became more and more interested in electronics and what satellite television was doing, how it was changing our perspective of the world. So I began adding more images because I could see the universe around the world is embedded with these signals, these electronic emissions that were going out into space, and I could see them crashing and overlapping and creating a sort of texture around the world. And I thought, oh, that might be interesting. So I started with that, but then very soon it also had to do with nuclear disaster, annihilation, the end of the world, the apocalypse. Because if you remember that period with Ronald Reagan, they were building up the nuclear, and the conflict with the Soviet Union was very strong, and people were very anxious about this subject. And so I kind of wanted to express something, but not using expressionistic paint. I found that to be a cliché.
Le virus aujourd'hui, il est moins technique, mais il est plus lié à la contamination organique. Et alors, le programme d'aujourd'hui, ils sont plus proches à comme l'attaque du virus pour vraiment les cellules.
Comme biologie.
Oui.
C'est plus proche de ça, c'est plus proche de fond de
biogénétique.
Et à vie artificielle. Artificial life, vie artificielle, c'est une forme de programmation
qui est très proche à vraiment la biologie.
Il prend la même règle de la biologie et appliquer donc c'est une représentation de la vie, mais c'est un modèle très proche de la biologie.
Comme il marche vraiment organiquement.
Exactement. Et utiliser la pense artificielle, l'intelligence
ha già cominciato a lavorare, tu hai già cominciato a girare, credo, perché tu sei un fedele. Alors, il a déjà commencé à travailler sur ça, et alors ça c'est intéressant parce que nous sommes à ce dernier niveau-là, qui est le dernier travail que tu as fait. On peut dire que le virus il est vraiment lié à la protéine et proche à l'organisme. Très proche. Alors ici, je te demande, mais nous sommes à quel niveau de l'esthétique nous sommes ici? Encore dans le niveau de l'esthétique kantienne, comme réflexion philosophique sur l'époque, ou nous sommes plus proches à l'esthétique des avant-garde qui voulait une recherche scientifique sur la sensibilité. Que pour moi, tu me sont plus proches à Baumgartner qu'à Kant.
Je pense aussi, parce que c'est pas une recherche analytique, c'est une recherche poétique,
Oui,
visuellement poétique.
Oui.
C'est ça, c'est comme pour moi, c'est l'analogie avec plein de choses, parce que oui, c'est le corps, c'est le sida, c'est le cancer, c'est comme tu veux, mais aussi c'est la civilisation, le monde sur la planète, c'est fonction d'un espace compressif. Donc c'est une vue très loin, comme un satellite, et c'est le point de vue très très proche de dans le corps. Donc je collapse le sens d'espace. Donc ça c'est pas du tout cartésien, pas du tout.
Et ça c'est la... Non, peut-être que tu restes encore dans la question de Kant, mais tu as développé vers l'autre question que c'est l'esthétique analytique, où tous les sens sont intégrés, tous les sens sont mélangés.
C'est exactement pour ça que j'ai utilisé l'orifice anus aussi, parce que les yeux et l'anus, c'est les deux sphincters dans le corps, le plus haut et le plus bas. Et moi, j'ai égalisé l'entrée et l'import et l'export. C'est intéressant. Et en même temps, en compte, tu sais, je suis très delusien.
Oui.
Deleuze, il est très grand compte.
Idea that was at the basis of the project of conversazione, not to be expressionistic, being expressive.
That's right, being expressive, not expressionist. I think it's all in the ist. We saw that the sort of neo-expressionism is nothing more than a conservative return to something we already knew. And usually we love the original artists more than the ones that were doing it now again. You know, like I love Max Beckmann, and I love Kirchner, and these first wave of German expression. And then
because you feel that there was something
the
different,
necessity,
yeah,
the
that is
passion, that they were doing something, breaking with the past, not using the past to recreate some kind
It's
of...
a big problem because there are two ways in postmodern.
Right, that's right.
The American ways from your side was a little bit different, completely different from the European point of view of avant-garde and neo-expressionism. Coming to your experience in Europe, because after the 10 years, no, in United States, you arrive in Europe, and you had a big engagement with an important gallery in Paris, at Candor. And how to say, you were the trade union between Candor and the scene, French scene, and Comics and Milazzo. Can you speak of this?
Yes. It all came about through my activities at Documenta. I was chosen to exhibit at Documenta. I came through Paris.
Which year?
1976, I believe.
1976.
Documenta 8. I think that was 76 or 77. I'm sorry, 86, 87, excuse me. And I came to Paris just on vacation with my girlfriend at the time. And I was staying at the little hotel, Laetitia, you know. And the phone rings, and it was this Monsieur Antoine Candot. I had no idea who he was, but he came to me. He came to me from an art critic in Germany named Friedemann Mausch, who had interviewed me for Kunstforum, and he recommended me to Antoine. And Antoine asked if he could come see me. I said, of course. And so we started very little, you know, he bought 2 or 3 drawings, then he proposed a show. I said, well, let's be very modest, let's have a little drawing show. And we did that, it was very successful, and he became really passionate about my work and very, very supportive of it, and the work sold very, very well, and so we started doing bigger and more frequent shows, and it was a very great period of collaboration for me. And at the same time, I was showing with Brooke Alexander in New York during that time. So it was rather a productive period. But my love for Europe has again to do with this complexity of the image, because I read Europe as in a kind of archaeological way. You have all of these superimposition of time periods, of styles, of languages.
This is true.
Yeah,
But
this is
on
true.
the other side, there was another thing in philosophy, because in that
of course.
moment, post-structuralism, I think
Post-structuralism.
was the most important
Yes, no doubt.
philosophy in the world.
Yes, and it captured my imagination right away. I started reading all of the semio textbooks, Brilio, Baudrillard, of course, and the others, and it just sort of funneled in. So I had the philosophy love. I had always loved French poetry. When I was a young man, I fell in love with Rimbaud, Verlaine, La Tremont,
And so,
these French.
these studies have something to do with your decision to come to France as an artist resident in Arbois? Or was, how to say,
I think it's a little.
something that happens?
I think it's a little bit. It's a little bit what happens, but then when chance happens and you grab it and you hold on to it and you make love to it, that's no longer chance. That's your destiny. So a little possibility occurred, and I grabbed that possibility, and I've hung on and I've stayed, and my love has grown deeper.
You can say that you're destiny like France.
Well, I think you can, and I guess if you think of my character, it's really that of a Bohemian. I mean, my four grandparents came from Czechoslovakia. They married in Chicago, and I feel sort of an alliance to the La Bohème, the Bohemian spirit of sort of freedom and ununiformity. Using your imagination to do something unusual, perhaps. And anyway, it's kind of my